Okay, thank you very much for joining our panel discussion today on how to approach model-based systems engineering. We have a very interesting and very knowledgeable panel available to go through the various areas we think are most important to when we are talking about model-based system engineering, how to start with this. So of course, first we will introduce ourselves very briefly, who is on the panel. But what we will cover here today is going through the compelling reasons why we need to adopt an MBSE strategy, what the adoption is looking like across various industries, then diving into challenges during the MBSE journey. And then when we are talking about the implementation journey itself, we look into what trends do we see? What, for instance, could be the intersection between MBSE and PLM or other systems? And what do we need from a skill level perspective, from an education perspective? And of course, we will have time available to have a Q&A, and then we have a brief wrap-up, recommendation for next steps, etc. Before I go into the introduction, just for your information, there is a chat and questions available throughout the entire panel discussion today. So please feel free to put your questions in there. So we will cover those maybe even while we are talking through the panel here, but definitely we will try to get to it at the end when we are talking about the Q&A section. At the same time, for your information, in the various segments, we will have live poll questions. So please put your answers in there, and you will see literally a few minutes afterwards also the results of this, and we will cover this in our discussion as well, what we get out of this. And at the very end, we will have a closing out journey before you completely leave us. Not journey, sorry, survey. Yeah, this is our journey to go through the panel here today. But that being said, I would like to introduce our panel here. First, I'm talking already. My name is Frank Popielas. I'm a managing partner and co-founder of SMS Think Tank. SMS stands for Systems Modeling and Simulation. I spent my career for over 2 decades in the automotive industry, Dana Corporation. I worked there and was responsible for CAE and systems engineering. And I'm also elected chair for the steering committee, NAFIN Americas. So that's very briefly on my side. With this, let's start with Marc. You're the first picture up there.
Yep. Hi, everyone. This is Marc Young with XLM Solutions. I may be the odd man out on this panel as my primary focus is around PLM, Product Lifecycle Management. My company, XLM Solutions, focuses on providing implementation and services around various PLM products. But I will bring the PLM, let's say, element to the model-based discussions today. So kind of, the tangential areas between PLM and model-based thinking.
Thank you, Marc. Greg, how about you?
All right. Hello, my name is Greg Garstecki. I have over 33 years using analytical and descriptive models, designing and developing products. And for the past 14 years, I've been applying my modeling capabilities in the fields of system engineering, both not only direct application, but then also through mentorship and instruction to other people. Today, I'm principal consultant at Garstecki Modeling Solutions, and I work with product development companies who want to improve their model-based system engineering capabilities. So that summarizes myself here.
Thanks, Greg. Chris.
Yes, my name's Chris Davey. I had the pleasure and privilege of working at Ford Motor Company for over 30 years with an outstanding group of systems engineers, software engineers, and automotive engineers, primarily focused on developing out and building out the integration between PLM and model-based systems engineering within a digital environment so that we could create that digital thread for the digital twins that supports and enables model-based systems engineering. Our application areas were really primarily focused on the ADAS systems, the EV controls systems, and the autonomous vehicle systems. I retired from Ford a year and a half ago and started a consulting company, which again, I try to help advise, guide, and champion model-based systems engineering within organizations.
Great. Thank you, Chris, Greg, and Marc. As you see, we have quite a bit of experience here across the various domains and industries available to us for our discussion here around how we want to approach model-based systems engineering. And with that, let's get started and dive into our discussion. And we want to start with the topic compelling reasons for adopting MBSE. We know there's quite a complexity involved with model-based systems engineering. Various industries have their own megatrends defined, and we have, for instance, put up here for the automotive industry with electrification, autonomous driving. And then when we are talking about systems engineering, there's definitely always the push that we say we want to have systems engineering as early as possible during the engineering development. With that having said, Chris, you have really a huge experience on the Ford side. What drove you to become an MBSE champion at Ford?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Fundamentally, it was the recognition that there was a compelling need for an efficient interdisciplinary collaboration framework at Ford. So let me explain that. My journey, briefly, was coming up through control systems in the powertrain organization, where we developed real-time hard controls. And we started moving into a model-based world. That was great, but we soon realized that that needed to extend across the different boundaries of chassis, electrical, brakes, etc. We didn't have a system in place at that point to do that. So I kind of evolved into championing the development of PLM systems to capture a framework whereby we could all collaborate, and then recognize that the PLM system extensions were necessary but not sufficient to have truly effective and efficient collaboration. And that's when I moved into the model-based systems engineering world, adopted SysML as a framework, and then built and integrated the SysML construct into the PLM construct, which essentially gave you the end-to-end innovation, product development, delivery mechanism in order to create or develop and design complex systems of systems. So I really sort of pulled into it that way. And as I said, it was an incredible journey. And I think we see this across many industries.
Thanks, Chris. And by the way, since you mentioned PLM, I think Marc will be happy because he says he is an outlier. No, you're not an outlier. PLM in the end is part of the whole thing. And we will get to this still. But before getting to you, actually, Marc, I would like to ask Greg a question here. You come from a completely different product spectrum than Chris comes. And so what was the driver for you to get into MBSE at Whirlpool?
Yeah, thanks. So it's a great question, right? I think traditionally system engineering and model-based system engineering specifically has been kind of an aerospace kind of domain, and it's good to see product development companies more moving towards this, right? I think from Whirlpool perspective, there was quite a number of reasons to go, but I'll go into kind of like 2 or 3 here. Like most companies, right, we're getting into system engineering and using models to actually move into the digital enterprise, if you will, right, all the way through from need statements all the way to actually the product out the door and then beyond, right, to support, right, is because the products, even in home appliances, the product complexity is increasing exponentially, right, not just in how they perform their fundamental functions, but how they perform in other attributes, for instance, noise and vibration, right? So an example is a clothes washer is no longer kind of in the basement kind of doing its work, right? It's right in the living area. So people are doing other things and they don't want to be disturbed. So it should be kind of performing quietly in the corner, so to speak, right? And then you add connectivity that consumers are asking for. And so that's a lot to take into account in the design. So that was one thing that kind of drove the system engineering and specifically model-based system engineering implementation. But then there's also the other side of the coin is the business aspect, right? So how can we, as a company, deliver the maximum value to the company, to the consumer, the maximum value to the consumer while minimizing the capital and development cost to the business, right? And I think this is where really having that architecture development and the digital thread, the traceability really has its value. And that's really two of the reasons, right, that we went down this system engineering and specifically model-based system engineering journey.
Great. Thanks, Greg, for that. I will definitely come back here in this segment still to actually to this what you said and Chris what you said before. But before that, Marc, from your perspective on the consulting side, you said you come from the PLM side. You work with so many different companies. We heard already from Chris starting to get the various areas together. PLM definitely plays a major role. And then Chris moved on and said there's much more to do. And this is where he went into the MBSE portion at some point. Working with so many different companies together, what do you see is driving them to start in the MBSE initiatives?
Yeah,
Or
I would
about to start.
Yep. I would say, I think, as probably know, is MBSE came a lot out of aerospace, a lot out of electronic companies and software companies. But it may sound obvious, but today's products, as we all know, and as you can see from some of the pictures, are becoming more and more complex. You don't just have a mechanical product or a software product or electrical product. Everything's Medtronics with embedded software, etc. And to maintain, as we said, the digital thread, to maintain all the complex things, that go into a product, you need a way to connect the dots. And MBSE and with SysML, as a language or as a tool, allows you to connect everything from your physical product to your software to the tools you're going to use to design and test the software to quality checks that want to be done on the software to making sure the requirements within the solution are being met. That's where MBSE can provide a very powerful way to connect and link everything together. So that being said, to maybe answer it, I think everyone's products, are becoming more complex, and anything from from an airplane to a washing machine, has all those complex components in it and needs a tool to manage them properly.
Right. Before we go to the next section here in our discussion today, I want to come back a little bit. You mentioned here some really good, compelling reasons why to adopt MBSE. From your experience through over the decades now, did you have a chance to put a kind of a number to it, even if it's just percentage-wise, that you were by going from, let's call it, additional engineering approach, where you have more like a disjointed or separate area into the whole system area. And I know from discussions, definitely, Chris, with you, with your background, you were able quite a bit to do because you have MBSE, what you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. If you could maybe give a few examples from your experience.
Yeah, so it's a complicated question. I'll start there. So
Yeah.
definitely the correct or an effective implementation of a model-based systems engineering process methods tools supported by some form of digital enterprise integrated into a PLM, that's ultimately a beautiful thing, right? So you can then wrap on your connected data, so you can bring back the customer's data into that world, that ecosystem, analyze it, and then design compelling solutions. I preface it with that because there's a learning curve. I think we're going to get into that later on. There's this price of entry to get into an efficient and effective ecosystem solution, right? So the efficiencies, you have to be very cognizant of where are you targeting your MBSE solution at? What problems are you trying to solve? And then what of all the different elements of this ecosystem that might be required, which ones do I want to focus on putting in place first to solve the immediate problems? When you do that, you can look at that scope and you can look at efficiencies, because each time you do it, you obviously want to justify what you're doing to senior leadership. So you need to have some traceable metrics. So within that context, a bounded sort of solution, and we did this for ADAS systems, EV and AV. If you look at the systems engineering work, the ability to reuse, the ability to connect to systems simulation and bring that data back in, there were instances where our feature development were improved massively. I mean, in the order of halving the development time and beyond of a given set of features or subsystems. Now, the one last thing I'd say is, of course, with any large enterprise model, you've got to then take those subsystems and features that you've developed and integrate them into the whole platform. So with an automobile, you've got 100 million lines of code, floating around. Your features and functions need to be well architected, as Greg described earlier, so that you can easily integrate that solution into that target architecture. Then if you look at the efficiency of both the feature development and the platform development delivered to production, it's really quite something. And the reuse then of all those assets which have been proven, that are functional safety compliant, that meet all your FMEA quality goals, is golden.
Yeah, I think so. I would like to add here, actually, from my personal experience, also in this case, also being in the automotive industry for a while, and automotive industry is also one of the industry that use quite a bit of simulation for a long time, and I'm talking high fidelity CAE. But at some point, also in my background, when I'm going back to Dana, we realized just by focusing on those high fidelity, you cannot keep up in order to be able to provide fast solutions or recommendations what to do actually, or to screen things. So that's why you had to go to the lower fidelity modeling techniques, and just HPC alone didn't help either high performance computing. So it definitely a different type of modeling, and this is the 1D0D had to come in. This is system engineering, the model-based system engineering portion. Maybe another our last brief comment, Greg, on your side. What did you see on your side? Did you see something there as well? Those benefits coming into play?
For the benefits from implementing model-based system engineering, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So the benefits around, actually the biggest benefits is this kind of trade space. So when you think of your set of having a good set of requirements, and then like you said, taking your 1D models, developing a system performance model across multiple requirements, and then developing the trade space. Of course, always this kind of performance utility function versus cost. And then, okay, in best case situation, you get kind of a Pareto, and then you can kind of pick. But just understanding that the interactions between, let's say, subsystems and the performance, if you look at all those together holistically at the performance, that's been one of the biggest benefits I've seen from helping companies with this kind of journey is the knowledge insight that maybe wasn't there without looking at everything holistically in a 1D model, right? A 1D analytical model, right? Based on your requirements.
Frank, if I could just add one other point to build on what Greg just said,
go ahead.
because I want to make it clear up front. The most important aspect of any of these processes are the people. The engineers, the engineering competency, the people, they are the glue that's going to make any of these systems work. So I just wanted to point that out, because you're absolutely right. The trade space, the ability to innovate and evaluate quickly with some sort of agile process, the people who are involved in that can make it or break it. So having that competency set one, but also the open-mindedness to be able to overcome some of the issues that might come along with the MBSE solution. Interfaces don't quite share data correctly, simulations that don't quite come up with the right structures. Being able to overcome that and then work through it, resolve it for the next time through, is critical. So just wanted to add that.
Yes.
No, I think this is very good. Thanks here, everyone, on this segment. We will come back to those portions here anyway, but I wanted to move to the next segment here, where we want to talk about MBSE adoption. What you see here is, and we want not just MBSE adoption in general, but across the various industries. And is it hype or is it hope? And that's why very briefly about the hype curve is where you have on number one here, what we see are the late adopters. So they are really the laggards it doesn't matter which industry you're in. They barely start to think about MBSE. When you're on top of at the peak, companies are trying to sort things out. So they already started to learn more. What is MBSE all about? What is involved, etc. So they think they're on the top of the mountain and let's go for it. But number three, this is where you fall down almost like into the trough of disillusionment. This is when you start to realize there's much more to it. Yeah. So, and that's why I think having this discussion today will help. We hope it will help you guys to get a better understanding, at least how to start the thinking, how to take the next step if you already started with your MBSE implementation. And that reminds me, did we start? Marc, if you could initiate a poll, the first poll here, while we are talking here, if you could answer here briefly to see where you guys are at. Do you currently have an active MBSE initiative within your organization? That would be great if you could answer this. And I keep talking here. And the leaders, they are turning what you see on the bottom there of the trough of disillusionment, and they start to scale it. So I think this is really interesting to see here. And I can here, yeah.
Well, we'll give everyone a poll. We'll give everyone about. Continue talking, but we'll give everyone about 20 more seconds, and then I'll end the poll. Unless you want to see it now.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. So, but while this is on the screen here, I wanted to go here and actually to all of you guys. Yeah. You're working nowadays with different clients. So not just with one company, and with different clients across different industries are involved in organizations such as Incosi, NAFEMS, where you think where you get a better feeling where the various industries are. So if you could give us a little bit, based on your experience, a feedback, where do you think the various industries are? Might it be aerospace? Might it be automotive, consumer products, telecommunication? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I can start here. I would say from an industry perspective, I'm going to close this poll. From an industry perspective, I personally, from being the PLM guy here and working with customers across all different industries. I think aerospace and defense is probably the biggest, and I see as a key driver. I know like the Department of Defense, a lot of these big military programs require, a model definition to be a part of the deliverable back to the government, whether it be the Air Force, the Army, etc. So a lot of companies are looking to adopt an MBSE solution and hence a PLM solution that will support it, just to support their deliverables back to the government. Now, that being said, and kind of going back to the prior conversation, implementing MBSE is not a magic button where you buy some software and you say, great, we have something we can deliver. It's really something that, companies need to invest in, set up their own, language models, etc., and educate their companies on how best to deploy it. Yes, there's software tools that will help you do it, but the software is more of a tool than an automatic method to deliver it. But going back kind of to the question, I really see the majority of it in aerospace. I think a lot of companies outside of that are very interested, but it's more of an education. They know the buzzwords, but they don't really understand what to do or where are the benefits or what does it solve, and hence we're doing webinars like this one to educate the people. So
if I might
let someone else
add
chime in. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of agree to some extent and disagree to some extent. So what do I mean by that? I think certainly aerospace, military, well, mainly aerospace and aeronautics were the thought leaders early on. NASA also was very deep. Incredible intellect and wonderful developments were done there. I think, and one of the beautiful things about the systems engineering community is the sharing. So through groups like INCOSE and NAFEMS, there was a lot of sharing of knowledge and understanding. So I bring that up because through that, at Ford, for instance, and in the automotive in general, we've been able to build off of the shoulders of these incredible thought leaders and adopt some of the solutions that they had put in place or proposed, but integrate them in a more accelerated way for a specific targeted design implementation in the auto industry. So I think it's interesting, reflecting back to this curve, this hype curve or whatever, adoption curve. What we've seen is if you're an early adopter, there's a benefit and a negative, right? The benefit is you're getting some value out of adopting MBSE and developing it, but the negative is many of the tools didn't exist. A lot of the standards didn't exist and frameworks. So you have to build that all out yourselves within whatever organization you are. So that's the slow. You learn a lot, you get some value. But what we're seeing now, which I think is a great opportunity, is that a lot of those best practices have been embedded into the tools through the tool vendors. So now if you're a late adopter, as it were, the whole landscape has shifted in your favor. You can pick up integrated solutions from tool vendors, albeit you have to customize them for your needs. So you can actually get a leg up on some of those early adopters to some extent. So just summarizing on that, again, I'm not knocking any industry, but I think that there is a really good adoption of MBSE in different areas within both automotive, medical, even in architectural industries. Yeah, depends where you look and how deeply you look. But yeah.
Yeah, by the way, thanks for this here. And before I chime in, and Greg will probably as well for a second, I think based on the first poll, we saw quite a few of you guys have already initiatives going. And maybe, Marc, you could bring in the second poll for a second. And we continue to talk meanwhile. And I just want to read it here once it's popping in. Second poll. Yeah, based on the current understanding of MBSE within your organization, at what level of MBSE implementation do you think you are? We thought we can bring this in since quite a few of you guys are already in process of having initiatives. With that being said, Greg, maybe to you, what's your opinion when it comes to adoption across various industries?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I don't think I could have said it any better than Chris. That's also what I had in mind. So I remember, so definitely within the Whirlpool's experience when I was there and adopting, right, we leveraged all of this knowledge from different organizations, companies, knowledge sharing, all that stuff to get up to speed very quickly. And even now, so all of this, like the tools that are available, those type of things. I remember there was like a rule of thumb. It took about, I think, 8 years. I remember there was a couple presentations or a couple kind of studies done, but took about 8 years from start to about when you thought that you were really rolling in model-based system engineering, let's say, right? And if you kind of apply that rule of thumb, I've been definitely working with companies that are definitely faster than that, right? Because of the enabling of using existing knowledge already, sharing that within the communities, and then also the tool vendors are also a lot better these days than, let's say, 10 years ago, for sure, right? So definitely see a lot of good things in the, let's say, the private sector, like, right? So certainly, as Chris said, with Ford and other companies, yeah, even like hand tool companies, other just once they're seeing the benefits of system engineering and using models to connect everything together to do their impact to change assessments, those type of things, yeah, it's just it's exciting to see, actually. So.
Yeah, thanks. And let me add here a little bit. And I think here we have the results also from the second poll. And definitely my experience also across the various industry, transportation industries are definitely pushing the limits everywhere. And might it be aerospace, might it be automotive or heavy duty, etc. Everything what is somehow involved in moving something around, they are looking to implement MBSE. The question is always how good. That's a different thing, and I don't see necessarily a company that really completely implemented anything yet. Definitely, what are the leading areas in even in those industries are everything what is related to software, embedded systems, etc. With that being said, definitely when you look into electronic industries, they are really quite involved into model-based systems engineering. Other industries like medical, mining, and especially construction, there's a lot of open space still, and they need to catch up quite a bit, but they understand that there is a need for this, and they are trying to really get into this very fast. With that being said, why we are not even in the leading industries where we have really good pockets of MBSE, I think we have to talk about the challenges during such a journey. And we talked about processes. We talked about that the people have to understand all this better. And we talked about technology. How is this all connected with each other? And what is your opinion? What is your experience? What are the challenges you guys were facing when you started your MBSE journeys? What maybe even various industry have in common or different?
If I may
So who
jump
wants
in.
to start here? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just reflecting upon my journey at Ford, I started off a couple of decades ago on this journey, and I think the biggest challenge for leadership and for anybody that's engaging is a fundamental understanding and awareness of what MBSE or digital engineering or modeling simulation means. What are the clear definitions of those practices? Why that's important is because when you're trying to develop and roll out a new set of process methods and tools in this domain, you need to communicate widely and often and clearly. And if there's this disconnect between definitions of these different pieces, then it makes it incredibly difficult. And you may well run into issues down the line because the interfaces that you set up that you thought would transfer data between your ModSim environment into your SysML environment, it doesn't work. So that was the first thing, just an awareness and understanding of what these things are and what they aren't. The second challenge was being very thoughtful and purposeful about what it is you're trying to accomplish over time with these solutions, so that you can both communicate successes and some failures up and down in the organization on a regular basis. So plan for success, plan for value creation and delivery, but make sure that you're doing that within this framework of understanding of the overall solution set, so that every small part you're delivering has a real purpose, delivers value, and ultimately builds into this overarching framework so that you don't have to reinvent or suddenly redesign something. And then finally, I mean, the other piece, of course, propping that up, as I said, people are absolutely fundamental. The engineering skill set competencies need to be aligned with what you're trying to do. You need to listen to the experts in the different domains to make sure that you're incorporating that in and they're brought along for the journey. And then you need to identify, is there a gap, a competency gap, and make sure that the engineering community have the chance to take the training and to get up to speed so that they can take advantage and evolve the solutions that you're working on.
Great, thanks, Chris. And Marc, could you bring in the next poll, because it's parallel to what we are talking about here. And by the way, for the audience here, this is a multi-choice, so it's not just one. Pick all what you think is applicable to you guys. And Greg, meanwhile, back to you, to your experience.
Yeah, so actually, I'll probably respond in two different ways. I think one from a strategic point of view, and definitely understanding what is your pain points, why you want to implement an MBSE strategy, or why do you want to implement system engineering at all, right? So understanding those pain points today from a strategic point of view. And then I think from a tactical point of view, maybe the two biggest emphasis, or at least the things that I've seen, is first one is that return on investment, right? I think when you think of system engineering or model-based system engineering in general, there's a lot of new activities that are needed to support the system engineering technical processes, right? A lot of new modeling that the company may not have done. So it's always that investment, and then you get the return on the second project through, or the second time through. So understanding that return on investment, because a lot of the return is on cost avoidance, and that's hard to quantify, right? So again, part of the strategy there, right? But understanding what the metrics are and how you're going to measure success and progress in this journey. I think the second one, which is always the hardest thing, and I think we've alluded to it a couple times, Chris just said it right, is the organizational challenges, right? Because without people, none of this actually works, right? The product development process needs people to basically understand, to believe that in that, right? So everybody has their own little point on that curve that we showed earlier on the adoption curve. And communication, yeah, you cannot communicate enough. And there has to be some kind of overarching, let's say, organizational change management tactics that have to occur, right? So getting those early adopters involved early and help kind of train the trainer to go forward, right? So definitely the organization is one of the biggest things because people are like, so if you bring in models into your product development process that haven't been there before, people are used to working in a certain way. So now there is a change management process that sometimes gets overlooked, right, or brought in too late in some of these initiatives. So it's something to always look forward.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. And while we have the finished here, the poll, and I think this reflects this also quite well, kind of what you guys communicated. It's really the challenge as to what is in for me, you know? not so much, it's like you said, Chris, earlier, the tools came along a long way. So it's much easier nowadays to utilize the available tools. So don't focus on the tools, focus on your own environment, on the people, on the processes, and try to find an understanding. And we will come back, and then I give it here to the panelists already. When we get into the Q&A, more into the KPIs and benefits. Maybe you can think about this here while I'm talking. So I would like to get back to this because this also here came up here. The benefits are not necessarily well understood. And this we see in our work all the time. And by the way, a lot of companies that have successful implemented certain initiatives, not as a company, but in certain domains, certain areas, they don't always publicize yet what the actual benefits are because it's huge competitive advantage. Just to give you, but we will give you some ideas from a percentage perspective what is possible in our Q&A section. But this gives me kind of the point, or maybe before I move with Marc, anything you wanted to add in that section?
I think Chris and Greg and you, Frank, said it all. Said most of my thoughts. I would just add, I think having an ROI, return on investment statement of what you're going to invest and where the returns go a long way in showing management the benefits it will bring, and not doing everything at once. Start off small, take baby steps. Do a pilot program on one thing. And as Chris said, look at the lessons learned, what went well, what didn't go well, and then grow from there. You're not going to, Rome wasn't built in one day. Start small and take, small steps to increase your MBSE footprint, at your organization.
Yeah.
So,
okay. I mean, that was already kind of leading into my next segment anyway. So thanks, Marc, for helping here with that. Kind of the last big segment I wanted to use here, implementation journey. It's a journey. You heard us here quite a bit from each of us already mentioning there's not just one thing and all of a sudden you have it there. I'm not going into all the details here. While we are talking, feel free to read this and you have this. But we wanted to cover a little bit here the trends, what we see, the intersection of from an ecosystem perspective and the skill level. We talked about one or the other aspects already throughout our discussion here. Chris, let me continue here with you. Do you think companies fully understand the complexity associated with implementing MBSE? You talked already about the skill level associated with it, but I would even say, what about management? Do they have a good understanding of what is involved as well, or what is missing here? What is your take on it?
I think to be fair to senior leadership, what I've seen over the past few years is there's a significant awakening and awareness, an incredible technical depth among a lot of the senior leaders now in our very competitive companies across all the industries. Very bright people, very sharp. Having said that, there is no expectation that they should fully understand and be aware of everything that's involved in this MBSE journey, because that would be unreasonable, right, for us to expect them to have that level of depth of knowledge. And quite frankly, when you look at the scope of all of these ecosystems, I don't think any one individual really understands all of the intricacies of all of the different interconnecting tool parts, right? Having said that, what's important for us as thought leaders within the organization, whatever level you are, whether it's on one small project, multiple projects across product lines, what's important is that you as individuals communicate upwards what's important for them to understand, for them to help you be successful. And that's really fundamental because they need to buy into it, right? You need to convince them that there's a value proposition, as Greg and others have said. And then you need to basically give them enough information that they can ask insightful questions, challenge you, but support you on that journey. So that's kind of my answer to this. And I'll just add to one of the most successful experiences I had with my teams when I was developing some of these processes was when I let go as a leader. I set up a bunch of incredible engineers, and I just let them be self-determined. I gave them some broad outline of where I wanted them to go and what I wanted them to accomplish. I didn't tell them how, I didn't tell them what to do, I didn't tell them what architectural structures. I gave them a budget and an expectation on timing. It was fantastic. They came back with innovations and approaches that I had never even dreamed of, and challenged my thought process, which was exciting because I had them convince me that I was wrong on some things and how to do it in a much better way. And that was a beautiful thing, to be perfectly honest. So getting the people with the passion, being able to communicate that back up to the leadership, and making sure that leadership's aware of what's critical for success for both you and for the company.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And meanwhile, you guys probably had a little bit chance to look on the screen where we're at kind of increasing maturity and where MBSE is actually located. When you come from a simulation-driven, test-driven, or wherever you might be and where you would like to be when we are talking about cognitive principles, for instance. This gives me 2 points here before I switch to Greg, actually. Marc, if you could bring in the last poll we wanted to have here. Why I mentioned here a few words here regarding maturity, that gives me the opening kind of, do you have a vision what you think MBSE should look like in 5 years for your company? And you see, we are not diving into any details here. But having that said, I talked about the various here from a maturity perspective. There's so many different elements that need to be introduced into a new environment of a company. And we are talking quite a bit of AI nowadays. Everywhere. It's a new buzzword. MBSE was a buzzword for a while. It still is, but AI is the latest one. And Greg, what is your opinion? How would that help fit into the MBSE environment?
Yeah, so this is a great question, right? I think AI, machine learning, we have all this data coming from connectivity of the products, right, and can be used to develop better products. So AI certainly has its place there. I think we're in the infancy of what it can do, because I think it's certainly that there's a lot of perceptions of AI, whether both good and bad, as you go. And I'm certainly not an expert in the forefront of AI, but when we think about some of the things that it can help on a model-based system, model-based infrastructure, I know there's a lot of reporting that we want to do that goes across multiple tool sets, multiple systems in your. So, and a lot of times actually sent to kind of like, okay, what questions do we want to ask? How do we want to implement? And then how do we connect all these things? So if there was AI can help in this, basically, if you could just ask it a question like you would, like we're trying to do right now in any browser, just ask it a natural question and it should give you back the answer, right? Always double check that, right, on the sources. But that would be a great benefit, is that if we don't always have to build out this across tool set or across systems within an organization, these metrics that are going to, of course, individual tools, individual like databases and things like that have really good metrics that are already there and can be used. But when you start to couple these together in a federated environment, how do you actually draw that whole like traceability from stakeholder need all the way out to your product, your part that you're selling, right? Your product that you're selling out there. So I think that's one way that it can help in the near term. Right?
And to chime in there with AI or this, model-based system engineering, maybe in general, as I said, products are extremely complex today, and I kind of been leaning more maybe to aerospace, but even taking a car, where there's millions of lines of code, tons of electronics, obviously mechanical capabilities, and you hear situations where things are complex. It's from a person's point of view, it's hard to see how everything's connected. Where an example of you turn on your car's radio, you turn on the windshield wipers, and you open your sunroof, and the car stalls because some of interconnected bug or whatever caused an issue in one system based on you doing stuff in other systems. And I think that's where AI can simulate a lot of different scenarios to see what can go wrong and see improvements and make things more efficient. So it's doing a lot of that today now, but I think AI can greatly improve upon that as well.
If I could,
but let me continue that thought. You go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I think those are some excellent points. Just building on what both our panelists said. So AI is already pervasive, right, in the systems engineering, product development processes. It comes in at multiple levels. You've got feature, function, asset, data, as you mentioned, Greg. You've also got process AIs. So AI agents are specialized sort of LLMs or transformers that are developed specifically for smaller tasks, right? So they're trained on data that's targeted. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity for model-based systems engineering, digital engineering world, because the structures that are put in place and the rigor of a PLM, MBSE system enables massively any of these AI elements at all those different levels. So I think I'd encourage anybody that's on this journey, just like we said with that adoption curve, you're in a great position to actually leapfrog into the integration of these AI either helpers, features, or data pool analytics to enable you to move faster, more efficiently, and more effectively at cost. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah, exactly. And I would almost continue that thought from a perspective. We are talking MBSE, but we are talking digital thread. We are talking traceability across not just the engineering domain, but the entire domain for a company, the lifecycle portion. Again, there we have different ecosystems nowadays available, and they need to come together. Might it be a PLM system? Might it be an ERP system? That's the backbone. That's the data of a company, and AI probably can help us actually to better utilize all this. Based on your experience, based on your outlook, Marc, any additional comments on that?